The next generation of world-class leaders won't be the ones who hustle the hardest, they'll be the ones who feel the deepest, the ones who forgive themselves completely and show up with nothing to prove. Because we live in a golden era, an age where conscious creators are rising into wealth, power, and divine authority. Gentle souls with fierce minds and loud hearts that are elevating the collective through their creations and enriching their own lives in the process. But even though we're witnessing this shift in real time, there's still a virus in the system. A leftover paradigm poisoning the minds of creators who know they're meant for more. You look to your left, and it's the grind gurus talking about productivity hacks, hustle habits, and 16-hour workdays. That's not self-mastery. I call that hustle porn. Then you look to your right, and it's the spiritual performers doing interpretive dances, speaking Atlantean light language, bragging about the elves they met at their 17th ayahuasca retreat. And deep down, you see through all of it. You're not here for performance, you're here for truth. Not cute affirmations, not badges of honor for burnout, but real clarity and freedom that comes online when the fear of being seen no longer sabotages you. Because the world doesn't need more performers, it needs creators who speak from truth, who are as confident as they are aligned, who are walking permission slips for what it means to live with soul. And here's the truth no one's telling you. More grinding isn't going to save you, and neither is your next psychedelic trip. What you're missing is forgiveness. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, like, Jose, what are you even talking about? But trust me, by the end of this video, it'll feel ridiculously obvious why forgiveness is the ultimate unlock you've been searching for. And in my last video, I broke down the 6 laws of the conscious economy. Many of you resonated with it, and some of you guys were even commenting your notes from it on TikTok, and that tells me that you guys are taking this seriously. And if you haven't watched that video yet, go watch it now, I'll link it somewhere here. But in today's transmission, we go even deeper, because this is the forgotten key to real wealth and magnetic success, and becoming a full spectrum conscious creator. I've broken down how to forgive your way to wealth and success into 5 sections to make it feel simple, yet deeply profound. So let's start where all deep healing begins, with part 1. You can't outwork a weak frequency. Discipline is not the cause of success. It's the byproduct of alignment. You're not stuck because of a lack of effort, you're stuck because of a weak frequency, and you're trying to broadcast success from a jammed signal. The answer is not more discipline or more hard work. The answer is deeper healing. It's going into the hidden crevices of your mind and soul and reprogramming your relationship with reality itself. Because if you're not getting the results that you want, or at the very least, not even on the path that's aligned with those results, you are misaligned on a deeper level. That's why self-sabotage keeps showing up like the hinge date you blocked who somehow keeps texting you. You've been there before. You've told yourself, this is it. I'm going to get my fitness under control and get in the best shape of my life. 2 weeks later, you're skipping gym days, drinking soda, and eating snacks. You've been to a seminar or a therapist who promised to change your life, and maybe it felt good for a few days afterwards, but by the end of the week, you're right back where you started, riddled with anxiety and confusion about where your life is going. You felt called to share your truth on social media, and for a while, maybe you did it. But when it didn't take off like you hoped, the fear of being seen crept in, and you silenced yourself because you thought no one was listening. Maybe you even started to make money in your business. You finally tasted momentum, but then something happened. A gut-wrenching heartbreak, a betrayal from a backstabbing business partner, or a strange and sudden loss of enthusiasm that made no logical sense. That positive experience, that was you tapping into an aligned frequency for a moment, but you didn't have the internal foundation to sustain it. Because old paradigms are sticky, they're like energetic cockroaches, they don't die easily. So you end up feeling like you're taking 10 steps forward, 5 steps back, constantly wondering where everything went wrong. Wondering if you're just not worthy of the success, the love, and the freedom that the gurus keep promising. And most people live their lives this way week after week, month after month, year after year, and some unfortunate souls never recover. And the truth of what is going on is that your mind and soul are reacting to every negative circumstance with self-blame. They convince you that you're doing something wrong. You were conditioned to believe that you had to be perfect in execution and impeccable at all times. You were shown books, videos, and content that glorified burnout, struggle, and sacrifice, and you believed it. So the moment you weren't perfect, you missed a step or just felt a little resistance, imposter syndrome jumped in and hijacked your frequency like it owned the place. That's what a weak frequency does. It convinces you that you're broken when really, you're just misaligned. Remember this, your emotions and beliefs carry a powerful energetic weight. Trying to be disciplined and optimize habits when your field is riddled with tension and uncertainty is like trying to run a marathon with 50-pound weights on each leg. Yeah, you can technically finish the marathon, but it will come at tremendous pain and it will take forever. One of the laws of this reality, confirmed by both ancient mystics and modern quantum physics, is that everything vibrates. Everything has a vibrational frequency. You just can't perceive it with your normal 5 senses. But it's everywhere. It's everything. Every atom is vibrating so rapidly that it gives the illusion of solidity. But that's just an illusion. Your mind and senses are interpreting the signal. Think of it like radio waves. You don't see them, but when you tune the dial of the radio to the right frequency, you pick up a signal from a station. That's how consciousness and reality work. And you, as a conscious being, at all times are generating a signal based on what you believe to be true about your reality. That's why perception is reality. And what you believe to be true manifests in your experience of reality. Those beliefs determine how you feel about yourself and the world, which shapes the thoughts you think, which constructs your mental attitude, which determines the actions you take and how you show up in the world. And that entire chain of internal experiences is what produces your external results. And here's the kicker, the results you get reinforce your beliefs, and so the cycle loops again. This is why it feels so hard to shift your life. When all you see is lackluster results, it's hard to believe in anything else. It's hard to think in terms of wealth and success when you're staring at circumstances that scream limitation. But I'm here to help you break that cycle so that your reality reflects more of what you truly prefer, because this is the invisible code running your life. It's a real equation made up of your beliefs, your emotions, your mental focus, and your actions. It determines the quality of your business, your relationships, your health, your freedom, your entire reality. And the key to making this equation work in your favor without the pressure or burden of painful friction is to cultivate alignment between your beliefs, your emotions, your thoughts, and your actions. Here's how I want you to visualize this. Your reality is divided into 3 planes: the spiritual plane, the mental plane, and the physical plane. The spiritual plane holds your beliefs and your emotions. The mental plane holds your thoughts and mental attitudes. The physical plane consists of your actions and results. Now here's where most people get this wrong. They try to operate only on the physical plane, trying to force actions and discipline rigidly to make reality conform to behaviors that aren't even in alignment with who they feel they are. And that's why everything feels so heavy. That's why going to the gym burns you out in 2 weeks. That's why your business won't scale. That's why your content isn't finding the right people. That's why your relationships dissolve into chaos, because at a deeper level, you don't mentally or emotionally identify as the kind of person who naturally experiences an abundance of wealth, health, freedom, and love. You don't believe your body is strong. You don't believe you deserve abundance in your finances. You don't believe you are a leader who can inspire others. You don't believe you are lovable. And that sticky energy is overriding all of the actions you take, mitigating your efforts entirely. And the more you try to force action from a misaligned place, the further you get from a reality lifeline that feels like flow and ease. And by the way, this is why affirmations don't work either. You can say all the affirmations you want until you're blue in the face, but you'll never outwork or outthink a weak frequency, because the mental and physical plane are the byproduct of your spiritual experience, your emotional experience of reality. Trying to force your thoughts and actions without mastering the spiritual plane is like a baby trying to jam a square block into a round hole, and then getting frustrated when it doesn't fit. But the solution is actually quite simple. If the baby just paused instead of reacting negatively, shifted its perspective and looked around, it would see that the square hole is right next to the round hole. And the equivalent of the baby's perspective shift in your life is emotional healing, reprogramming your beliefs and emotions. Mastery of the spiritual plane is what changes everything, because otherwise you're only operating at 10 to 20% of your actual power and wondering why nothing sticks, feeling like you're spinning your wheels and not really making much progress. Meanwhile, you watch others who don't seem to be trying that hard effortlessly attract the results you know you deserve. Deep healing is the answer. And don't worry, we're going to get to forgiveness here shortly. But before we do, we need to talk about the 2 emotions that are most responsible for why you keep sabotaging yourself, why taking action feels like you're fighting an invisible ghost, and the ghost keeps winning. The 2 emotions distorting your frequency and keeping you locked in loops of resistance are guilt and shame, which brings us to section 2. Oh, and by the way, these are all principles that I'm going over in my upcoming digital program called the 4-Hour Conscious Creator, so that in just 4 hours a day, you can monetize your creations and become a leader in the emerging conscious economy. Join the waitlist and I'll notify you when it's ready. I'll leave a link in the description below. But let's get into section 2, guilt and shame. As above, so below, and as below, so above. That phrase is an ancient Hermetic principle known as the principle of correspondence. Above is the physical plane, below is the spiritual plane. And in essence, when your spiritual plane is riddled with guilt and shame, your physical plane mirrors that frequency back to you by pushing away the very thing you wanted. And the opposite is true as well. When the physical plane is contaminated with toxic environments, dissonant relationships, or unconscious consumption, it weakens your inner world. This is why the people you associate with, the environments you stay in, and the content you consume regularly are shaping your reality whether you are conscious of this or not. And if you find yourself living in circumstances that drain you, confuse you, or disconnect you from spirit, it's time to reevaluate your inputs and shift the energy. Because guilt and shame are the lowest vibrational emotions you can ever feel, lower than anger, anxiety, and resentment. And the vast majority of people have energy fields so clouded in these frequencies that they can't see, think, or feel clearly. Now, if you look at the map of consciousness, you'll see guilt and shame way at the bottom. The bottom emotions are contractive, the top ones are expansive. Negative emotions create tension in your mind, body, and soul. Positive emotions create lightness, clarity, and alignment. Now let's break it down even further. Shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the belief that you are wrong or foolish. Guilt is the belief that you've done something wrong and therefore deserve punishment. And that's the state that you're living in, not because you've actually done anything wrong, but because you've internalized ridiculous expectations implanted by society and people unconsciously telling you that they know what's best for you. They told you what success should look like. You heard from the hustle porn stars that you need to burn the boats and that this is the one secret strategy that you have to do, and you have to fight hard to earn your place in life. And somewhere deep in your subconscious mind, it created a dynamic that if you weren't perfect in strategy and execution, if you didn't push as hard as they said you needed to, your mind translated that as, well, I messed something up, therefore I'm not worthy of success, or I can't push as hard as they said I needed to, so I don't deserve to be free. And that belief further cemented you into guilt and shame, weakened your frequency, and sabotaged your results. And as a conscious creator, that self-judgment, that fear of messing up, is like pouring water onto a fire. It kills your genius. And somewhere along the lines, you mistook being intentional for being dead serious about everything. But seriousness is just stifled energy disguised as care. Are you starting to see this now? This is all an energetic game. Guilt and shame made you overthink, overplan, overcalculate every little detail because you're afraid of resistance and failure, afraid of stepping outside the script that you were handed. The moment you feel even the slightest tension, it triggers the wound that says, I'm not good enough. So you get rigid and try to be perfect. You tighten your grip. And even if you're strong enough to push through, even if you manage somehow to succeed by society's standards, you'll still feel empty, like you're living on edge, like you're running from danger when there was nothing threatening you in the first place. Real success and real freedom, real genius level creation doesn't come from fighting your way through life. It comes from surrendering to flow and healing your relationship with your own emotions. Because negative emotions aren't evil, they're messengers. They're showing you that something about what you're doing or how you're doing it isn't aligned. And when you've healed your inner child, when you stop badgering yourself to live up to a broken blueprint of success, you stop performing. You stop judging yourself so harshly, and you simply start being yourself and doing what you want. You become the kind of person who goes to the gym not because you have to impress others, but because it feels good. You don't go for money because you want to prove how important you really are. You attract high-quality income opportunities because you're sharing something valuable that supports your freedom and makes other people's lives easier. You don't chase friends and love to fill a hole in your soul. You attract real comrades that create an energetic vortex of love, positivity, and abundance for all. You force nothing, and in return, you gain everything. From this playful, carefree energy, you finally place the square block in the square hole, and you start operating at 80 to 90% of your real potential. And I don't say 100% because no one is ever really at 100% of the time, but you get my point. Dissolving guilt and shame is about shifting your perception of reality. It's realizing that your path was never meant to be linear or perfect, and that's not a flaw. That's the design. It's realizing that you are drastically overestimating who you think you need to be in order to be worthy of that next level of freedom and success. It's realizing that, yeah, you're gonna have to put some work in, but it doesn't have to feel like shit the entire time. And in fact, the work actually feels tremendously fulfilling when you're calling your own shots and creating from your soul. This is how alignment is restored between your energetic world and your physical results. And now you might be saying to yourself, okay, Jose, I totally get it. This makes perfect sense, but I still feel guilt and shame. I've had moments where I felt in flow, but they never last. That's why in this next section, we go even deeper, because it's time to release the weights you've been carrying, to stop performing for the world, and to finally nurture your inner child with the love, compassion, and forgiveness they've always deserved. We finally arrive at the core of this video, section 3, forgiveness. The next generation of world-class leaders won't be the ones who hustle the hardest, but the ones who forgive themselves the deepest. So relax, you're being way too hard on yourself. And I don't say that to coddle you. I don't mean to say that as some feel-good woo-woo nonsense to pretend that everything's okay. I say it because genius-level creation and inspired action only come online when you stop judging yourself so harshly. You see, every child is born with confidence and an open soul. That's why the Bible says, "Woe unto those who cause these little ones to stumble," because children carry the purest frequency of God. But as those children grow, they either get programmed out of their openness by guardians who are afraid they get hurt in an unforgiving world, or they go out and experience the world for themselves and realize how painful it can be to have a sensitive, gentle heart. So they close it. They withdraw from their essence in an effort to protect themselves. But in doing so, they weaken the very source of their power. They seal off their imagination, they kill their dreams. Because the world told them those dreams were unrealistic or naive. They were told the ones who do make it must have sold their soul, and that good people never get anywhere in life. And they believed it. They believed the lie of limitation that society accepted a long time ago. And so the inner child goes silent. The adult shows up just to go to university, get a job, pay bills, get a mortgage, sacrifice for the family, live below their means, hopefully squeeze in one vacation per year, and call that being responsible. They do all of this never realizing that guilt and shame are pulling their strings like a puppet master, controlling them, guiding their choices, making them dance for approval of a world that doesn't even know who they are. They live trapped in survival, shrouded in a protection mechanism that forgot the world is supposed to be a divine playground, one swirling with fun, opportunity, and alignment if you just let it be. They were never told that it is absolutely possible to live with such playful ease and joy and also be wildly successful. The two are not mutually exclusive. And if you're that person right now, someone who's allowed societal expectations to dull your light, and you're ready to break the spell and reclaim your alignment, then forgiveness is being called upon you. To forgive means to release resentment or anger towards yourself or others for a perceived flaw, offense, or mistake. But hear me when I say this. Life will never ask you to forgive others. That's not the point. The point is to forgive yourself, to realize that any harm or betrayal you experienced was never a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of someone else's disconnection. As a conscious being, you hold up a mirror to others, and most people live in the comfort of their unconsciousness. So when they see themselves reflected in your light, they reject it, because they're not ready for that kind of love or truth. Remember this, unconscious souls are also terrible receivers. They are cut off from the magical spontaneity of life, and anything that comes easily or effortlessly must not be real. And you don't have to forgive them for anything that they did or for trying to knock you out of your own divine alignment. If you genuinely do, that's beautiful. Hold space for them. They need it. But the real forgiveness is this. You forgive yourself for ever believing that you were the problem. That realization alone releases the guilt and shame you've been burying in your subconscious for years. You forgive yourself for not being perfect because you realize you never were. You aren't now, and you never will be, and that's allowed. You remember that even the people that inspire you the most still have insecurities, still make mistakes, still fall short. You realize all this time spent overthinking, overcalculating, overreacting to every bit of resistance was just your unforgiving self judging yourself into oblivion. And in that moment of pure raw consciousness, your life circumstances take on a whole new meaning. It doesn't mean everything becomes perfect. It doesn't mean you'll never feel negative emotions again. It just means those emotions will no longer cause you to collapse inward. You'll stop reacting against yourself. You become neutral to the rhythm of life. You even begin to find joy, grace, and gratitude in the moments that used to break you. You stop forcing fake gratitude. You stop writing shallow gratitude lists trying to prove to yourself how spiritual you really are. You no longer need redemption. You no longer need someone to apologize. You don't need to prove you were right or wronged. They didn't betray you. They betrayed themselves. And you're not here to prove anything. You're here to simply be yourself. You don't panic when the strategy doesn't work because you realize that the strategy was never the point. It's not about the funnel. It's not about the perfect routine. It's not about how many hours you put in or how many credentials you collect. It's about the soul behind everything that makes it work. And that's what you're being called to create as a conscious creator, a more healed and forgiving you. A version of yourself that others can feel and say, I don't know what it is about this person, but I want to live like that. A version of you that no longer feels the fear of being seen as a reason to silence your gifts, but feel it as an opportunity to grow and explore the depths of your soul. Because the world isn't actually unforgiving. It only feels that way to the untrained mind and the disconnected heart. It's incredibly supportive when you step into your own power and alignment. It's funny, the moment you stop fighting reality, drop your sword, and soften your heart, that's when the hand of God steps in. That's when life meets you halfway. That's when you develop an aura so magnetic it pulls everything you desire towards you. You begin to trust. You begin to feel that even when things look uncertain on the outside, even when the path disappears in front of you, God and the universe are still guiding you in ways your mind can't yet understand. That's what creates gravitas. In physics, the greater the mass of an object, the greater its gravitational pull. So too it is with your soul. When your soul is dense with rich and clean energy, you also elicit an unseeable force that is only explicable by the depth of your consciousness. That's the kind of being who nurtures their body with ease and builds a beautiful physique, who creates masterpieces without force, who leads without needing applause, who excels in every category of life without even trying. It all begins with forgiveness, because forgiveness of self is what elevates you to the plane of the master. And I know it's hard to internalize this multidimensional experience when you still have 3D bills due, your heart is hurting, and you still feel like life is heavy. That's why I added a couple more sections to drive this point home, because no matter what your situation looks like right now, zoom out. When you grip too tightly, life slips through your fingers. Remember back in section 1 when I said life feels like you're taking 10 steps forward and 5 steps back? Zoom out. You're actually plus 5, but your hypercritical mind doesn't see it that way. It sees the 5 steps backwards and panics. It spirals and judges and invites imposter syndrome and self-sabotage to pull you even further off course. That's how a distorted lens tricks you into believing you're failing even when you're making progress. You're further along than you've ever been, but because growth doesn't feel like a rocky montage, you assume something's wrong. Understand this, the ancient Hermetic principle of rhythm states that everything in life moves in cycles, ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, like a pendulum swinging in and out. We see this everywhere in nature. The tides come in, the tides come out. The sun sets, then rises again. Winter fades, spring blooms. Empires rise, empires fall. Your life is no different. The problem isn't the setback, the problem is how you react to the natural rhythm. You hit a dip in momentum and suddenly think you're broken, but all you're doing is reacting out of sync with life's rhythm, and that reaction drops your frequency even lower. That's what actually pulls you out of flow. Let's use the stock market as an example. Everyone loves seeing a stock that's up 20, 30, 50%, but the moment it drops 5 or 10%, they panic. They assume the company's a failure, they sell off in fear. But zoom out on the chart and the truth looks very different. The best stocks, just like in life, follow rhythms. They gain 20%, then they pull back 10, then up another 15, then a 7-point dip, then another 20 up, and maybe a 5% correction. If you're constantly reacting to every pullback, you're no different from the retail investor who loses money because they couldn't sit still through the cycle. And guess who profits from their panic? The ones who zoomed out. The big players who understand the rhythm. The same applies to your life. Your own journey has frequency peaks and troughs. There will be moments of divine momentum followed by natural corrections. Your goal as a conscious creator is neutrality. When momentum is high, you don't become arrogant or over-celebratory. It's normal. You're not surprised by your own power. When the energy dips, no problem. You stay centered because you know the pendulum will swing back in your favor. It always does. And from that place of inner steadiness, you raise your baseline. You experience higher and higher levels of flow, abundance, and effortlessness because you zoomed out. The key here is adopting a longer time horizon. You stop chasing instant gratification and you start trusting the process of aligned inputs. You realize every moment is serving me. You're not obsessed with outcomes. You're focused on what you're creating in the present moment because you know that momentum builds in the long term, not overnight. The conscious creator lives like this. They don't grip or force, and they don't panic when plans don't play out exactly as expected. They hold the macro vision, but they trust the micro flow. They reduce importance on outcomes because they know it's not the outcome that matters, it's the conscious genius you bring to each moment that magnetizes the results anyways. And ironically, once you stop trying to control the flow, you begin to direct the flow. It's a paradox. The moment you surrender control is the moment you gain true influence and power. And when you live your life like this, you activate what I call the real-time genius, which brings us into section 5. You're a genius. Everyone is. You just got programmed out of it. This final section is meant to leave you with something tangible. Not just more theory, but actual reframes of reality you can apply right now to start thinking differently. And that begins with deprogramming the academic conditioning that robbed you of your creative intelligence. Most of us spent 22 years in school, and those years taught us to think in linear terms. That's why it's so difficult to unplug from the matrix, because whether you realize it or not, you were trained to associate life with failure. Let me explain. In school, your performance was measured by tests, most of them multiple choice. 1 correct answer, 3 wrong ones. A, B, C, or D, and anything outside of the right answer was marked incorrect. That's called convergent thinking, and it's the foundation of standardized education and logic. You got rewarded for being right and punished for exploring alternatives. But then you graduated and entered a world where that model doesn't work, because in the real world, there is no one right answer. Life isn't a Scantron, and you're not being graded every other week. There are no perfect instructions. Reality for a conscious creator is not about picking from a pre-selected list, it's about tuning into your own soul and creating new possibilities. This is where you shift into divergent thinking. It's not about picking the correct answer anymore. It's about realizing that some answers are simply more aligned than others for you. You live in a reality of infinite possibility, and the more you tap into your creative intelligence, the more you generate answers that fit your unique path, not someone else's. This is why all the frameworks the gurus tried to sell you didn't work. Not because they were wrong, but because they weren't designed for your frequency. You can teach two people the exact same strategy, the same steps, the same script, same delivery, and they'll get completely different results. Why? Because strategy is secondary, frequency is primary. If you're aligned, you can make the less correct strategy work in your favor. And if you're out of alignment, even the best strategy will keep you stuck and second guessing yourself. Divergent thinkers aren't here to replicate the system, they're here to redefine the game entirely. They don't rely on tools that are outdated, rigid, or disconnected from soul. They apply creativity. They create in real time. Remember this, as a conscious creator, you're not aiming for predictability, you're aiming for alignment. Because 1 hour of aligned action is equal to 10 hours of performative action. That's why all the things you've been trying to force haven't been working. Not because you're lazy or unworthy, but because those actions weren't designed for you. The future leaders of culture aren't performers. They're not looking for validation. They're not optimizing for algorithms. They're expressing their genius in real time from a place of radical authenticity. They create what wants to be created. They share what needs to be said even if nobody else gets it yet. Because they're not here to fit into a template. They're here to carve their own category, to say what others are feeling before those people even know how to say it. That is the real-time genius. And it doesn't mean you're smarter than everyone else. It doesn't mean you wear intelligence like a badge of superiority. It means you are so unfiltered, you are so unapologetically yourself that your creations carry a powerful signal. And when people experience that signal, something inside of them activates. You become the permission slip. You become the spark. And yes, sometimes the path isn't going to make sense. Sometimes your mind won't understand what your soul is doing. But remember, uncertainty doesn't mean confusion. To the conscious soul, uncertainty means infinite possibility. And everything I've transmitted in this video will be totally obvious to you once you've forgiven yourself, because you've released the guilt and shame of a system that was never designed for you, and you are now aligning with your own blueprint for creation. And when you do that, reality reorganizes itself around your genius. Opportunities start flowing. Abundance finds you. Discipline becomes your natural state of being because you're clear on what matters most. And reality bends to reflect your inner alignment. So loosen your grip, zoom out, get back in rhythm with your soul. And most importantly, think for yourself. The world doesn't need more content creators, it needs more conscious creators. The ones who build from the heart, who speak from the soul, and who lead others home through their presence. We are ushering in a golden age of conscious creation, and it starts with you. And if you know that's you, and this video piqued your curiosity, I have something for you. In the coming weeks, I will be launching my new digital program called the 4-Hour Conscious Creator. It's the blueprint to monetizing your creations, designed to feel deeply soul-aligning, yet pragmatic in implementation, so that in just 4 hours a day, you can nurture the conscious creator inside of you and experience the abundance you've been looking for. If that excites you, join my waitlist with over 600 other conscious creators waiting for it to officially drop. I'll leave a link in the description. I love you all. Thanks for watching.